welcome back to Meatys Garage. Today we'll be doing an oil change on my 2004 Forester XT. I want to do a video like this for anybody that maybe just got into Subarus and they're upon their first oil change, or maybe it's for somebody that's done oil changes at a dealership or maybe at a service shop and wants to save some money and learn how to do it at home. So what we'll do is we'll move on and see what kind of things we'll need to complete this task. Alright, here's the things I'm going to recommend to do this job. Some shop towels or rags. I like to use the disposable nitrile gloves to keep my hands oil free. Right here we have a 3/8" drive socket wrench with a 12mm socket and an extension. This is going to be to remove the skid plate or splash guard. Now if your splash guard is OEM, there's a good chance that you have access holes to get to the filter and the plug. So you may not need to do this. The flat blade screwdriver is also to remove the clips on the splash guard. 17mm wrench to remove the drain plug, and oil filter pliers for your oil filter if it gets a little stubborn, like they do sometimes. There's also a strap oil filter wrench that wraps around the filter and tightens down with a ratchet. These are the oil filters you could use. There's plenty of other options, however these are the kind that I've been using for years now. For the STI, the Forester XT, and I believe the newer WRXs, 06 and up, it calls for a PL 14612 Purolator, and that's a Pure 1 gold filter. Now the WRX 02, 03, 04 can also use these filters. They're a little smaller than the PL 14460 that their book calls for, but they will work also. The mobile one is a slightly more expensive filter. I'm not sure which one's going to give you more performance, but these are two that will work for what we're doing today. A funnel, keep the oil from spilling everywhere when we fill. And here is the oil that we'll be using. This is Valvoline full synthetic 5W30 oil. This is what I recommend. This is what I use. Our vehicle specifications in the manual, I believe, point to 5W30. Some people can argue what kind of oil is right for your car, but I kind of stick to the manual and I haven't had any issues with this oil. You'll also need a drain pan of some sort to catch the oil. Maybe if your vehicle doesn't set high enough with this Forester XT, it sets high enough for me to get under, so I don't need a jack or jack stands, but you might need those as well, especially on a WRX or an STI. Okay, now we're underneath the vehicle. I have not yet removed my splash tray. I just wanted to show you guys that the filter and drain plug is accessible without removing it. So I'll remove it now just to show you a better view of what I'm doing. There's 12mm bolts in some of these holes. We'll take each one of these out, and there's a couple of 12mm bolts here on the jack plate. We'll remove those, and I think there's a couple of clips in the back. They should pop loose and the tray should come down. Some other things holding this tray up are some of these pop tab clips. Need to remove those with the flat blade screwdriver. The way that works is you'll put your flat blade in there and you'll pull it out, and then this will just pop out of place like that. Okay, the first step on our oil change process is to make sure the car obviously is not hot. Cool to the touch is what I'd recommend. What I would do is take this oil cap off. This will allow the oil to flow out nicely. I always pull the oil dipstick up a little bit to let it vent when we add the oil. And then we'll move to the bottom of the car and start the draining process. Okay, now we're underneath the car. What we're doing here is we've got our drain pan underneath, ready to go. Our 17mm wrench, and this is the drain plug on the bottom of the oil pan. I'm going to turn that counterclockwise to break it loose. Sometimes if it doesn't break loose just on pressure, you can kind of tap the wrench with a rubber mallet or your hand and it can break loose that way. After it's broke loose, I turn it out, spin it out, and I leave pressure on it, pushing inward so that it doesn't come shooting out everywhere. Let me use my other hand here. And when it's just about ready to come out, which it's all the way loose, ready to fall out, I quickly move my hand and pull the plug and allow it to spill out. That makes for no messy hands and no big mess. Keep the pan underneath the drip and let it all flow out. Okay, now that our oil is down to a small trickle, what I like to do is make sure your oil pan is underneath your oil filter and take some oil filter pliers, and spin this counterclockwise. Let's see how tight these things can get here. This filter was on so tight I've had to crush it with these pliers to try and get it loose, but just shows you how tight these things can get. So couldn't have gotten that off by hand. I like to twist it till it breaks loose, and then spin it real fast by hand and let it fall, and then let that all drip off. Alright, we've come down to it's just a slight drip. First thing I like to do is go to the oil cooler. This is where the filter rests, and go around this edge and wipe off all the oil around it. Clean it up nicely. And then we'll take the drain plug and we'll clean that off with a rag. We don't want any kind of grit or sand in there, any metal particles to stay on it. We'll clean that up and put the washer back on there, or you can also use a new washer if you like, and we'll snug that down. Alright, we'll put the drain plug in. We'll tighten that down firmly by hand. Use the wrench and snug it down nicely. You don't want to over tighten it, but just kind of give it a couple thumps and make sure it's nice and snug. Okay, for our next step, this is what I like to do. Get the new filter, take a little bit of your new oil, get some on your finger, and go around the gasket. You want to lube up the new gasket with new oil, so prevent it from sticking, maybe like the last one we tried to take off did. And make sure it doesn't bind up, bubble up. And we'll thread that on. I like to snug these purulators up with the grip by hand. Not go too tight, but also not too loose. Okay, next we're going to add our oil. These will take all 5 quarts. Put our funnel in and pour our oil in. We'll remove our funnel and replace the oil cap. And then replace the skid plate or splash guard if you removed it. If not, push down the oil dipstick. You'll start the car, let it run for about 30 seconds, shut it off, and then you'll check your oil level. You should be at the full mark.